Cassandra, thanks so much for joining us today. I want to take a step back because you were someone who in your teens began to model. You were someone who also faced insecurities like many young women do with your acne and your skin. But you eventually decided to take to YouTube to really use that platform as an opportunity to talk about your journey. That was a struggle for you at first, though, to really publicly share the real you and the authentic side of that those skin challenges. Can you talk a little bit about those early days?
Yeah, Moira, it wasn't just a struggle, it was a secret. The first YouTube video that really blew up was one where I exposed my bare skin, but most people don't know that I had to film that twice before, and I deleted the footage each time. Growing up, I was called things like pizza face and connect the dots, and I recognized that my acne was worse than a lot of other kids my age. I vividly remember, like at those high school football events, I was sitting back on the bleachers one day, and I was wearing a white shirt. When I was walking back to class, people were pointing, and all of my acne had burst. And so growing up with that, I reverberated what other people said to me in my own head, and that just exacerbated my emotional and physical condition. And it was exhausting to try to cover this up with makeup every day, to feel worthy of being in the world and worthy of the way I look. And it was like this frustration I got on YouTube because it wasn't a thing in 2010. I was like, this is how I get through every day. I hope this reaches someone that needs it.
What was the impetus for you to finally not just share your story with that platform, obviously being a chance for you to connect with others and talk about your experiences, but what was your impetus to actually show your bare skin and to really finally, take that huge step?
I think it was frustration. I would look up to these women in magazines and billboards, and I was like, oh my God, they are so beautiful. And yet here I was, a model, putting on pounds of makeup, and they would say, come makeup free, but I would wear foundation. And I would get cast for these photo shoots, and because of Photoshop and good lighting, I could get booked. And by the time that final photo came out, it was like, oh, that's me, but that's not me. It was a makeup artist and a hairstylist and a photographer and an editor. And I almost felt like I was living this double life. I had seen 23 doctors and dermatologists to help me with my skin, which I still wear the scars today. And here I am, hurting myself, hating who I am, not feeling confident or like I'm worth my parents' time. And yet I'm sitting here parading around on a runway like I'm some image of beauty. And that felt very hypocritical to me, to the point that I was just kind of done with it. And YouTube was this one place where I saw like 3 other girls who were doing their makeup and feeling empowered by their skin. And I was like, this is what I enjoy watching more than what I'm seeing in these magazines. I want to be like you guys. Can I join?
Can you talk a little bit about the reaction you got to that video and your experience realizing that something so authentic and vulnerable had such an impact that it did?
Yeah. Moira, when I first posted that video, I didn't look at the internet for 4 months. I was intentionally. I was in an abusive relationship. I had been struggling with my mental health. I was hurting myself because I didn't have the tools necessary to really embrace my confidence or understand how to ask for help. I think that's one of the hardest things. And when you grow up being called connect the dots or freak of nature or the walking infection, how do you expect the internet to be nicer, especially in 2010? And I didn't look at that video until January, February, March of the next year. And when I did, I broke down. It was probably my first time in 5 years seeing beauty in humanity. Because instead of people telling me that I was ugly or unworthy, people were saying, oh my God, I struggle with this too. I have the same struggle. I don't see any celebrity. I don't see any model. I don't see any person, even in my workplace, experiencing this. You make me feel less alone. And I was just like, oh my God, the doctors who said I wasn't the only one, maybe they were right. Like, maybe this is more normal than we think, and maybe we're just all embarrassed and so we're not talking about it.
So you have this experience where you really tap into something that so many young women face, and these sets of emotions and vulnerabilities and challenges. How, though, did you think about continuing to build on that conversation that you were having? You struck a chord, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's sort of a body of content or conversations that you want to be having, you're comfortable having, or that you're able to have. How did you begin to think through what that meant?
I don't think I did think it through. For a long time, YouTube was this big secret. This entire platform of social media hadn't really hit mainstream. And it was this small community of like-minded people who were going through the same thing. There was one woman who told me she was about to marry her fiance. They'd been together for 2 years and he'd never seen her without makeup. And because of this community, she felt comfortable sharing her skin with him. And guess what? He didn't break up with her. He married her. And now they have a kid. And when I was trying to understand what it meant to have this community or what it meant to mentor other young women or teach them about not just the beauty of makeup, but the science behind skincare, our skin has multiple layers. How does that work with the rest of our body? It became almost like this passion that was fueled based on this pain that I had felt previously. And in the beginning, I didn't know how to make that work or how to turn that into a business. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way because I listened to other people who told me, I have the answers, or I'll help you, or, oh, you care a lot about this? We can amplify it. Do what I say and follow me. And unfortunately, as you probably learn in every form of business, not everyone has your best interest in mind.
When you look at those mistakes, which obviously are invaluable to all of us in terms of those learning opportunities on our trajectory forward, what was the most valuable mistake that you made, or one that you see others falling into when they're thinking about connecting to an audience, building a community, or even building a business on a platform, especially today that's so established?
Not knowing your core values and not sticking to your authenticity. I had been doing New York Fashion Week runways. I had been exposing my bare skin. I still have acne and breakouts, right? And I found, through recommendation, a manager who said that she would help me take my business to the next level. It was kind of top-down talent management. And I was doing promotions for chapstick. I don't hate this lip balm, but I'm doing these promotions for something that I don't necessarily believe in. Here I am. I personally choose not to eat animals because I believe in consent, and that's a personal choice. But this manager says, oh, I have a promotion for you next week for a steakhouse. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I feel like I'm living a lie. Like I started this to help other people who felt the way I did, that acne made us ugly or unworthy, and to help turn that on its head and say, no, this is actually a biological human condition. 60 million teens are struggling with this and adults do as well. That's where the passion was. So I was like, why am I straying from that authenticity? It was one of the hardest lessons, but I also see, as other influencers are up and coming after doing this for a decade, you see people start to sell out, or you see human nature run its course in a person having an insecurity and taking on something that isn't authentic to them, but they think this is the way of the world, or this is the look of the influencer, this is what I must do. And let's be honest, like the word influencer has a very negative connotation in a lot of ways, but just the way you can have a negative influence, I believe that someone can have a positive influence. And sticking to those core values of honesty and intellect and being able to be that acne big sister for people, really committing to making a positive influence is what keeps me going.
What do you think is the biggest misperception people have about the business of influence, or what it means to build a brand around it, especially now when there are so many platforms, there's so many mediums, and there's a lot of white noise in terms of people engaging, how they engage and understand it?
I don't think people know how this works behind the scenes. People don't realize that you can have $1 million business without selling any products. The way that I compare it to is like the New York Times, right? If you wanted to run an ad for a shoe or a freaking vacuum machine and you wanted to put that on the front page of a newspaper, how much would that brand have to pay to get 5 million impressions? How could they track how many people purchase that item? And with this digital medium, that can be tracked easier. And for me, not having a brand of my own at this point, I have worked in the industry for over a decade. I can choose products that are right for each person and not be financially biased by a conflict of interest. And there's affiliate commissions. Even just by posting content, YouTube or Facebook, these companies put ads on that video content, and we're earning revenue from that, from that way. So if you look at it from, you have this advertising and commercial stream, you have this affiliate stream, you have just simply these ads that are already being placed on content. Just by existing and sharing content that other people find valuable enough to watch and listen to, you can turn that into monetary compensation. And I think even more importantly, you can turn that into a community that actually stands for something and that makes a positive impact in this world.
Can you break down what it means to have a business model around a community? I think you brought up the point that it's so important to stay true to your values, to really stay authentic to who you are, and to always have that North Star in terms of what you're doing. And now there's opportunities to monetize that in a way that really allows you to stay consistent to it. But if people, I think, are still surprised that you can build $1 million business without selling a product. So how do you build a business and monetize community in a way that's allowed you to stay authentic to who you are?
I think it starts, at least for me, with that commitment. And as an example, there was an affiliate network that would reach out to us all the time and say, oh, use this code, and promote this makeup palette and you can earn X amount of dollars. And I was like, well, I don't agree with those ingredients, or I don't agree with what this brand is doing. That's just not authentic for me. And there are many other influencers who love those products and they've been able to build successful businesses. For us, we use a company called Narrative. They're another founder that's 30 under 30. And she built this entire affiliate, it's like an affiliate 2.0 platform that allows people, magazines or influencers, to talk about products they honestly love. And as long as somebody shops that, whatever is in their cart, we get 1%, 5%. And that allows us to keep that authenticity, but still be able to say, okay, if what we're providing is of value, you can use this link or you can just go on the internet. But either way, there's a revenue stream there, and then it helps us, employ 23 employees and pay for the medical and the benefits and all those things that nobody prepared me for.
I want to talk about that transition into this entrepreneur and the business arena. But I want to drill down a little bit in terms of, you have leveraged this platform to share your story, and then it becomes a thriving community and it becomes sort of an engine, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're the content engine of that community. I think sometimes still people have the misperception when we talk about influence, that it's, this content that it can sometimes be very off the cuff, or it's maybe not as strategic, or that it looks seamless, when there's a lot of thought and strategy that goes behind it. Anyone can do it, but it doesn't mean you can be successful at it. How have you learned to develop that content strategy and the way in which you want to have this narrative and conversation with the incredible community you built?
Yeah. I think it comes down to knowing what matters to you so you can speak about it with authenticity and interest. But also, it's about doing more of what works and less of what doesn't. We have 9 video editors. We couldn't do any of this without them. And when I started, it was me behind the computer for 12 hours a day. And a lot of people see the influencers on the trip or the vacation. They think it's all that, but a lot of people have the Instagram husband or the boyfriend or, the wife or that person who's helping move those things. I think that it does look effortless, but I think that's kind of the point. If you want to watch a movie, you're going to go to Netflix. You're going to go to the movie theater. If you're going to ask your mom or your friend for a skincare or beauty recommendation or a stroller recommendation, you're not going to go to the big screens. And I think that YouTube started out as this peek into someone's personal life. And because of that, I believe that influencers or people who put themselves online are much more accessible and quote unquote real than the traditional celebrity who always looks perfect and, has this mysterious life behind the scenes. I think that content purposely looks homemade. We find that the content that we post that looks homemade, it does better than the highly produced things, because people have this parasocial connection to my acne journey or what I've struggled through, having to ask for help when I needed it most. And when I started 10 years ago, it was this craving for authenticity because there wasn't any. And I think that even more now than ever, when we see a lot of people who look beautiful but the same, having someone who stands for something that we struggle with or that we believe in, that's just alluring. And then if you can take that and you can create a piece of content for that every single day, there's always going to be a new product to review. There's always going to be a new celebrity who did something. And there's always going to be someone who has an insecurity because of media or the industry. So it's like, okay, how can we have an open conversation about that? And how can we talk about it?
When you set out to do this, you weren't setting out to build a brand, to build a business. It was this extraordinary evolution over time, which I imagine had many peaks and valleys. Can you talk a little bit about your transition into doing this as a way for you to build a community and have a conversation into a $1 million plus business?
Yeah, I think the big turning point was when I realized I had to flip the model upside down. And it was this idea that normally talent, whether it be a model, an actor, an endorser of some sort, they're kind of run behind the scenes by these management companies. And a lot of people don't see this, but you have these large corporations or these talent managers, these agents telling the talent, you show up here, you promote this product, you do X, Y, Z. I had mentioned I was in an unfortunate business relationship that I thought someone had my best interest in mind, but this person had their commission in mind, right? And I had a mental breakdown. I was in a psychiatric facility. I needed to learn to ask for help. And I recognized that my anxiety when I stepped outside of those walls of the safety and security of therapy, and specifically my job, this one thing that I loved so much, that was my passion, is all of a sudden becoming a source of stress because I have to answer to this manager or this person, and then to feel like they're trying to force me to promote lip gloss and steakhouses. That was when I was like, okay, this isn't true to why I started. This isn't true to who I am. And that's when the real work began. I said, I have to understand what makes people click on content. How can I, you're not sitting here searching for how to embrace my skin with acne. Someone's looking for, what are the 5 best spot treatments? How can I cure this XYZ? So, okay, if I can hook someone in with, these are the best products to use if you have acne, and then sit there and say, okay, you can use these products, but also what you look like doesn't define what you can do for this world. That's how we get that message across. And as that started happening, I said, okay, I'm going to be my own boss, but then I had to be a boss to other people. And I had to step into this leadership position when half of the time I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to hire multiple editors and tell them how to edit in a YouTube style with cuts and fart noises instead of a Netflix style. And then you have to deal with HR and with payroll and with multiple people who you wonder, like, are they just showing up for a paycheck or do they care? And turning that on its head and deciding to kind of become the boss and step into that, that was something that no amount of school or coaching or even just asking people in the industry could have prepared me for.
What was the hardest part for you in terms of that shift to becoming a boss? Because obviously in the early stages of any business, you're the builder, you're the creator, you wear every hat, and you're in every detail. When you're a boss, it requires you to let go. It requires you to get deep into types of things that would never have existed in the early stages of the business. Where did that stretch you, or where was the biggest challenge for you?
There were so many. I think that definitely learning to let go of something that is, this started off for me as a diary. This was me sharing my bleeding face. This was me publicly working through a relationship that wasn't healthy for me. This was me publicly sharing my deepest insecurities, thinking that nobody would see them. And then one day, Good Morning America calls. Like, how do you prepare for that? And then when you start to invite other people into that, having come from a traditional managerial world where people are motivated by money, how do you find people that actually care about helping others? How do you find people who have that same vision? And right now, oh my God, I get to work with the best team. Almost every single person on our team has dealt with a skin concern or an issue. And they've either been bullied for their body or for the way they look. And they care so deeply because they're not just coming for a paycheck. I will pay any of our employees to leave. I would rather you leave than to be here and not like the work that you do. And realizing that for me, kind of stepping into that leadership position, it was terrifying because I'm like, well, I'm giving everything I have, everything I care about, plus my financial income. just giving this to a team of random people, I better be able to trust them.
I would imagine that trust is so critical when it's not just your business, but it's your personal brand. And when it is your personal brand, and putting that in the hands of others is really challenging for a variety of reasons. When you look back at the work that you've done, what have you learned about building a brand along the way in terms of the consistency of the community and also the way in which you're continuing to evolve how you connect and the ways in you connect with your audiences?
I think that trust is fundamental to all of that. If you're going to watch my content, if you're going to take a recommendation from me, you have to trust that I'm actually going to recommend something that has your best interest in mind. If I'm going to create this content and allow other people to share these ideas, messages, and trends, I need to trust that they're going to be able to do that in a way that is real and that it has a meaning. At the end of the day, I am the person who has to put my head down on a pillow. I have to be okay with my actions. And there have been many times in the past where I couldn't do that properly. We don't get every day. And so I'm like, okay, how am I building something so that it's not just about, okay, X amount of money or X amount of followers? There's a huge responsibility that comes with literally holding someone's insecurities with them and not fixing their insecurities, but being on that journey with them and saying, you are enough and I can help guide you to finding yourself through this. I think that trust is truly fundamental, but it's one of the hardest things to do.
How has that work evolved when you look back to the early days, when it was just in the beginning, to the work that you're doing now? You're speaking to much bigger audiences. You're doing it across many, many different platforms. How have you learned to grow with your audience and with the changing dynamics of the world that we're living in terms of the ability to connect and engage and to build a business on that?
Yeah. Moira, I was such a different person 15 years ago. I had this high squeaky voice and I was in $80,000 worth of debt. When I was making social media money, I didn't know if I could pay my cell phone bill. And I would try to make sure that I was wearing the nicest little shirt and you could see the logo, when I did my video, because I was that insecure. And for the past decade, I have had to live and work through those insecurities blatantly online and admit those faults and fall publicly and be able to work through that with the grace and the help of people who have also been there. And now when I look back at that, I'm like, oh my gosh, what a weird person, or I can't believe that was me. But I think it's a testament to how we all grow and we step into who we are meant to be. And I'm sure that I'm very different now than I will be 10 years in the future.
If your business is about sharing that growth with your community and them sharing it with you and this really sort of open and vulnerable relationship, you mentioned that there's times where you maybe have misstepped or you don't always get it right. You don't know, like any of us, right? It doesn't always land. You make the wrong decision. But it's very different when you're doing it with your community and your business is your community. How have you learned to continue to evolve and ride through those moments or fail, take more risks to fail, but get back and bounce back faster?
Yeah, I believe in failing responsibly. It's human nature to make mistakes. And I don't think that humans are defined by the mistakes we make, but how we recover from them or how we work through them. And failing publicly, I think it is different as someone who creates content versus just a figure behind a brand. There are brands that mess up, but you might not identify, you might not even know who that founder, who that CEO is, and they can be replaced at any time. And putting yourself out there so publicly, it is terrifying. It's kind of become a way of life, but it's refreshing because it gives me this sense of responsibility and purpose that, if I were just kind of behind the scenes, I don't know if I would feel it as viscerally as being able to stand here in my own skin and say, this is what I live with, but this is also what I do. And I think that seeing other people step into this as well, or being a mentor and helping other people, like guiding people who have these traditional businesses and saying, here's how you be more authentic online. Here's how you speak to your customer base. Do you actually know what they want? Have you sat down and spoken with them? That is so valuable. And I don't think that traditional business schools always teach that the best. And especially in a day and age where for the past year, we've been walled up in our rooms, we've felt a lack of connection. Why do we wear the brands that we wear? Why do we drive the car or wear that watch? It's because we identify with that brand in some way, right? Well, then how are we identifying with the people in the media we consume? And I think that us being able to tap into that, being able to ask the questions of what works, what doesn't, and what still within that kind of Venn diagram feels authentic to us, that's the sweet spot. And when you can turn that pain into passion, I just don't feel like there's anything that can stop that.
A lot of people look to you as inspiration, not just in terms of your story and the way that you've really committed to creating such a safe and powerful and empowered community, but also the business that you built and what you represent as a young woman, as an entrepreneur, and a leader in the space. If someone were looking at the work that you've done now and looking to think about sort of what does that journey look like for them in this space, how do you counsel young women or people who are thinking about embarking on this type of business, this type of venture?
All the time. It's young women, it's young men and non-binary friends. There are doctors who come to us asking for advice or help. And I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to be asking you, right? There's business owners who do the same thing. And something I've noticed through speaking with others, whether it's consulting or just in the community, every single one of us has an insecurity. And I believe that it's those insecurities that do hold us back. Are you sitting here and are you looking at the scar on my cheek? Or are you looking at the blemish that I've got going on? Or if I have something in my teeth? No. Each one of us is worried and hyper-focused about our own bodies or our own appearance and how we're presenting ourselves. So if we're spending so much time looking in the mirror, how can we have that positive impact in the world? I heard a quote that I can't remember where I heard it. It was probably on YouTube somewhere. But it was that people don't remember what you say or how you look, but they remember how you made them feel. And that is something that I try to live with every single day. I'm like, okay, I'll hook people in with the, hey, you want this makeup? Or, hey, you want this celebrity, routine? But I'm going to make people laugh. I'm going to commit to educating, entertaining, and empowering. Those are the 3 E's. And every single team member is also on that journey, and that's what we live to do. And when I speak to other people who have those questions, I think it's about stepping into that. I think it's about finding that thing that is uncomfortable and kind of staring at it. And if that means therapy, great. Being put in a psych facility and getting therapy was the hardest thing I ever had to do because I had to ask for help. But being able to do that, it allows us to break free of the things that hold us back. And 99 out of 100 times, that one thing is ourselves.
You started this endeavor many years ago. You talk about the fact that YouTube was in its true infancy as a platform, and now today it's such a thriving, extraordinary community and just platform around the world. What does it mean to be an entrepreneur on YouTube today?
I think it's very different than what people expect it to be. They don't realize that we've got a team of employees, contractors, etc. We've got 50 people who work every single day on our content. I don't think people realize that it does take a little bit of strategy, but it also takes a lot of putting yourself out there and a lot of failing publicly. In the past, I used to see failure as this end-all be-all. It's like, okay, you fail or you win. But what if we redefine that and it's on this linear scale? And you have to fail a certain amount of times to get to success. And I don't think that people always lean into that the way they could. They say, oh my gosh, I filmed a video, I sound weird, I look funny, or people didn't receive it well, I'm done. As opposed to saying, okay, what did people not like, or what went really well? How can I do more of what works and less of what doesn't? How can I be a part of that positive change?
Before we wrap up, two questions for you. When you build a business around a brand, obviously it feels very personal, but those failures, sometimes the feedback is not always about you. How have you learned to take the feedback that at face value is incredibly personal and can be incredibly stinging. Obviously, there's moments where the feedback is empowering, but also, the platforms and communities today can be hateful and really tough. Can you give any advice around how you've learned to navigate that journey?
Moira, it hurts.
Does it still hurt?
It still hurts. And I think that having a team who believes in the same thing and seeing a community makes it hurt a little bit less, because you realize, okay, yes, there's someone who's upset with this, or someone tells me I have a horse face, or someone says that I shouldn't, be able to give advice about acne if I'm still breaking out. Of course it hurts. But having people that you can talk to helps. And also, if it doesn't hurt, that means it doesn't matter. And every time it hurts, yeah, it sucks. Like there are comments that I read today that just get you down. But if it didn't hurt, it means it doesn't matter. And it keeps you humble. And it reminds me, this is why you're not taking the steakhouse promotion. This is why you're not putting your name on a product that you don't believe in. Because I've had 5 chances to do that. It's like, okay, can I go to bed and put my head on this pillow and know that I feel good about what I do? And so the haters, in a weird internet way, your haters are your elevators. Well, they're watching, right?
That is true. They're watching,
yeah.
Right? And at least they're taking the time to say something. What would you say to them?
Thank you. Thank you for helping me see myself in another light and to see my flaws more objectively. A lot of the feedback from haters, even if it's veiled in this anger, there's something real in there that I can understand. And I can choose to take that feedback or to ignore it. Chris Voss is an FBI negotiator, and he said a quote to me that I'll never forget. He said, "Never take advice from someone you wouldn't trade places with." And so I get to look at that feedback and I get to say, is there something veiled in anger here that's actually a nugget of gold that we can implement and learn from? Or is this someone who, like me when I was 16, is this someone who's hurting? And this is the one place that they have to lash out. Are they being hurt at home? And this is the one place that they're just projecting that on someone else. And I'd rather they project it on me than someone in their own life. And the fact that our team stands up around this, the fact that we rally around this, we're standing up for something. And the fact that we're getting some sort of pushback, it means that it matters. And that to me, it's very humbling, but it's also a reminder about why I do what I do and why even if you gave me all of the money, all of the followers, all of the clout in the world and said you can stop tomorrow, I'd be like, no, I wouldn't have purpose. Like, what would I do with life?
Her purpose is what gets you out of bed in the morning.
Very true.
Last question for you. If you were to look at your younger self when you were just embarking on this journey and give yourself either one piece of advice that you would have listened to or that you wish someone had told you in those early days. Obviously, you have to learn the lessons the hard way. But is there one thing that you would say to that person at the beginning of this journey?
There's 2. I think the first is fail forward. Lean into those mistakes because they're learning lessons. And if you ignore them, they just become bigger and they're going to come bite you, right? Learn from those failures and see how you can adapt. I mean, media is constantly adapting, and that's why our entire team is successful. And then I believe that the second one, let me think about that. I think the second one is just ask. What's the worst that someone can say? No. Well, what's the best they could say? Yeah, I'll sign your book deal. Yeah, I'll help you create a skincare line. Yeah, I'll subscribe, I'll watch your videos. Yeah, I'll help you not want to kill yourself every day. Asking for help is the hardest part. But the second that we do, that opens up the opportunity to connect. And for me, that's what builds community. And without community, it doesn't matter if you have money or followers or fame. Who do you have to share it with? I think that's the most important part. And I think social media puts that in all of our hands.
Well, thank you for those great insights and your continued success. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
This was wonderful. Thank you for sharing and for giving this space to talking about how media is changing things.